Hey everyone, Harry here over at Tackle Express. Today we're going to be covering trout fishing with ultralight trout gear. We're going to be breaking down everything that you're going to need, including rods, reels, line, and all of the lures that we're going to be using for this ultralight trout fishing. So let's get in and break down everything that you guys are going to need. First things first, we're going to start talking about the reel of choice. This particular model is a Vanford 500, which is excellent for 2 to 4 pound tests. The reason why we're recommending this little bitty 500 instead of say a 1000 or anything even larger is because the rod that we're going to get into after is very, very light. So therefore this lighter 500 size spinning reel is going to match both the lightness of the rod and it's going to make it balance the best. And again, this reel is specifically designed for 2 and 4 pound tests. So for instance, with 2 pound tests, you'd get roughly right around 200 yards, while a 4 pound test, it quotes 100 yards. This guy comes equipped with 6+1 ball bearings, and what that means is it has 6 bearings inside of the reel to give you the smoothness, and that +1 is the bearing that's inside of this roller arm. When your line is spinning off of the reel, that bearing's going to allow it to spin and have absolutely no friction or resistance, allowing this reel to be the smoothest and the most precise out there. Again, for 2 to 4 pound test, ultralight trout fishing, that's going to transition into a very light action rod. For instance here, we have a Phoenix Elixir ultralight trout rod. This particular model in my hand is a 5'6", which is rated 1 to 4 pound test, 1/32 to a 1/16 of an ounce. So therefore, this rod is a very, very ultralight trout rod. Reason why we're going with this rod specifically is because of its super whippy action. The super lightness is going to allow that bait to be flicked out a fair distance, and it's going to be light enough that you're not going to pull hooks on any of those trout. But this rod is also very sensitive. As you can see, the blank is very thin in diameter, and it also has a very soft, light action in the tip. So therefore, you're not going to want to overdo this rod. This rod says it's rated 1 to 4 pound test. Therefore, you're not going to want to exceed any more than 4 pounds because you could be at risk of damaging the rod itself, as well as its lure rating. 1/32 to 1/6 of an ounce. You're not going to really want to go anything lighter, and you're definitely not want to go heavier. Reason why you wouldn't want to go any lighter is the action of this rod is tuned to its exact ratings that it provides. If you were to go any heavier than this, you could be at risk of damaging this rod. Again, being very thin, it is fragile. It is also very sensitive, so there's some things that we're going to avoid on this rod to prevent anything to happen, whether it break, damage. We're going to avoid anything that's going to damage our fragile ultralight trout rod. So there is this term called high sticking. High sticking is essentially when you pull the rod at an abnormal bend. I'm not pulling very hard, but figure if you were to exceed this anymore, you could be at risk of breaking the tip, which would obviously damage the rod. Therefore, you'd have to go through warranty and then get that guy replaced. Again, the ways to avoid that is to not exceed its line rating. Don't go any heavier than what it quotes. And same thing for its lure rating. You're not going to want to go any lighter than what it quotes, and you're definitely not going to want to go any heavier because you could be at risk of breaking it. Transitioning into talking about the different types of line. I described this reel was saying that it would hold roughly 200 yards of 2 pound and roughly right around 100 yards of 4 pound. And that's talking about a monofilament. There's 3 separate types of line. There's monofilament, fluorocarbon, and braided line. Braided line is more of a threaded fabric material. It's wound all together. It's very strong and rigid. You are required to tie a leader. It's not ideal to fish straight braid directly to your lure of choice. Therefore, the fish will be able to see it, and you might find yourself getting less bites than you should. So if you do decide to go the braid route, which there are some benefits and there are some disadvantages that I'll cover right now. Some of the advantages with braid: it is tremendously thinner than your your leading monofilaments or fluorocarbon. For instance, I have an 8-pound braided line right here, which has an equivalent diameter of 1 pound test. This little Vanford 500 spinning reel we have here quotes 105 yards of an 8-pound braided line. The braided line is a smoother, better casting line, so therefore you are going to be able to get increased castability. It is more sensitive, therefore when you get a bite, you can typically either A, see it first, or you're going to be able to feel it a lot better than you would with, say, a more plasticky rubber bandy line, like, say, monofilament or fluorocarbon. A reason why I might suggest to steer away from braided line, it does require you to have to tie a leader knot. Again, you don't want to fish straight braid directly to your lure. You are going to want to add some sort of leader. For instance, we're recommending some Seaguar Invisix fluorocarbon. It is a fantastic line. Difference from fluorocarbon to monofilament. Fluorocarbon is nearly completely invisible to the fish's sight, therefore it should help increase the amount of bites that you get, equaling more fish that you put on the deck or in your stringer. There are some times that we might want to go straight fluorocarbon, and that might be if you don't want to deal with tying a knot to the braided line. It's not always super difficult, but it can be a little tedious when it comes to attaching an 8-pound braid that's the equivalent of a 1 pound diameter, and then trying to tie a very thin piece of 2 or 4 pound leader. If that leader knot is a bit of a concern, then it might be a better route to go straight monofilament or straight fluorocarbon. And again, the Vanford 500 reel that we were talking about of a 4 pound test quotes 100 yards, which is plenty of line for any of the trout that you'll be catching. Transitioning now into some of the lures of choice. Here's a couple different options. We have some miscellaneous soft plastic mini jigs as well as mini swim baits. There's spoons and there's jerk baits, all of which have a time and a place of when we would suggest to fish. The spoons are a very versatile bait that can cover a lot of water. You can do a lot of different things with it. You can simply sink it down to the very bottom of the lake and you can vertically jig it. Or you can cast, splash, simply start turning the handle right on the surface. You can sink it down to any desired depth and hold true to that depth that you're trying to cover. So that's when the spoons can be very effective of covering water and targeting a specific zone. The spoons are a little bit of a faster retrieve, so figure if your trout are a little more active, they're aggressive, and you want to throw something because they're chasing a little bit more, that's a great time when we pick up a spoon. Or when we might want to pick up something like a jerkbait. A jerkbait might look a little bit intimidating to start, but there's a very good thing about these jerkbaits. They can catch big fish and they can also catch small fish. Typically with the jerkbaits, you are looking for a little bit more of an aggressive fish. So I'll typically start with that, the first cast of the day, looking for that big bite. And if that's not happening, I might transition into something else. But the jerkbaits can also be versatile. You can simply cast, splash, and start turning the handle. You can throw them off the back of the boat and troll them behind you as you're moving from spot to spot, or use them as your dedicated trolling lure. They are very versatile, very effective. We personally highly suggest them. Now, if we're working towards something that might be a little more subtle, we have our mini jigs and mini swim baits. Those are going to be the more very slow moving baits. You're going to fish those guys very slow. You're going out, you fish the jerk baits, you fish the spoons, you've thrown everything in the kitchen sink and you're not getting a bite. That's a time when you might want to pick up that light ultra finesse mini jig. Reason being is because you can fish those guys extremely slow. For instance, hookup baits over here, they make a 1/32 of an ounce, and they also make a 1/16 of an ounce that are designed specifically for the trout fishing. Those are going to be one of my more personal favorites, along with the Sierra Slammers, both of which work very effectively. Again, being more of a subtle, slower moving presentation, you can fish these guys methodically slow. So when I have this rod and reel buckled up, I'm going to be jigging the rod real slow, about like this. Literally about like that cadence. And I'm not whacking it up and down. I'm not doing these teeny tiny shakes. We're doing nice steady pops, about like such. Nice rhythm. All I'm thinking when I'm fishing that mini jig, whether it be a hookup bait, a Sierra Slammer, or any other style finesse mini jig, you're gonna wanna work that guy really as slow as you possibly can. And as I'm turning the reel handle, as I'm bobbing my rod, doing my thing, I'm literally going to turn the handle about this speed. And that is all accordingly to the depth that you're fishing. If you're fishing super shallow, you might have to wind it a little bit faster to avoid snagging the bottom. But if you're fishing deep water, you're not anywhere close to the bottom, you can fish this so methodically slow it is not even funny. So on those super cold days, high pressured fisheries, that's the time when those mini jigs and mini swim baits will excel. And as we transition into the spoon style fishing, which again is a very good bait to cover a lot of water very effectively in a variety of different ways, we also have these Presso spoon boxes made by Daiwa. And the really cool thing about these is they have this soft felted insert with foam, and you just simply put in your little hooks with your swim baits or even your spoons, and they got this little wrap that will protect all your spoons from getting tangled up, falling apart. It'll keep them all nice and uniform. This is really good for your spoons specifically, but you can also stuff mini jigs in this as well. One thing though that I forgot to mention, again, you do not want to overrate this rod specifically. It is an ultralight trout rod. Again, this particular model is rated 1 to 4 pound test, a 32nd to a 1/6 of an ounce, which is perfect for fishing all of your hookup baits, mini jigs, and small jerk baits. But this particular bait is an exclusion. This bait is simply too large and too heavy to fish on the rod that we were showing you. Therefore, for these larger baits or different techniques, you're gonna wanna upsize the rod that you have of choice. For instance, again, the Phoenix Elixir I have here is 1/32 to 1/6 of an ounce. You're gonna wanna go heavier to accommodate anything in this larger size. And that's it, guys. Feel free to drop a comment below with any questions, concerns, or what you thought about this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, ring that bell to be notified on our next video. I'm Harry from Tackle Express. We look forward to the next video.